Hello, my name is David Lee and my partner is Brian Park, and we will be doing an individual oral commentary on the poem Stealing by Carol Ann Duffy. This poem was written in the 1980s, a turning point of British history. Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister and she was making radical changes in terms of education. The better schools were academically rewarded with extra funding, whereas schools with poorer results were regarded with cursory care. As a result, in some areas of England, students were not receiving proper education and thus were more prone of doing other activities, many of which were illicit. Therefore, those who weren't properly educated were viewed as pariahs to society and were often disregarded. This idea of someone being improperly educated and left alone can definitely be reflected in stealing. We will explore the overarching theme of loneliness and ostracism through the analysis of the poem's structure and structural devices, diction, imagery, and attitude and tone. Firstly, I will be talking about the poem's structure. The poem is free verse and it has no specific pattern. Therefore, Duffy is trying to convey the lack of order the speaker feels. However, there are regular quintains or five-line stanzas which contrast with the disorder. Thus, this may imply the speaker's desire to have order in his or her life, or in other words, a desire to be accepted by society. Moreover, the only characteristic that is clearly distinguished is the speaker. The reader does not know who the audience is, and so this idea of the speaker talking to essentially no one augments to his or her loneliness. As for structural devices, Duffy uses caesuras and enjambments. The caesuras add choppiness to the sentence fluidity, and thus there is an irregularity in the speaker's flow of words. For example, in this first stanza, there are caesuras after the words magnificent, moon, hymn, and brain. These interjectory punctuations serve to underscore the disorderliness in the speaker's voice and hints at his underdeveloped oratory skills. Likewise, Duffy also uses many enjambments. The latter part of each enjambment negatively contrasts with the beginning half. For example, in the first stanza, the speaker states that he or she wants a mate, which is usually viewed as a companion that one can share a warm relationship with. However, the speaker continues to say, a mate with a mind as cold as a slice of ice, and this is antithetical to the stereotypical warm, light-hearted image of a friendship. Finally, Duffy also employs internal rhyme. The poem is very colloquial in a sense, and the speaker uses a lot of conversational diction, such as mucky, mate, nicked, flogged, and so on. Therefore, there's an evident juxtaposition of colloquialism and the lyrical element of the poem, and the lyrical element is revealed through Duffy's use of internal rhyme. From stanza 1 to 2, there's a rhyme between head and dead and chill and thrill. By making these words rhyme, Duffy is adding a poetic and joyful connotation to the coupled words, implying that the speaker feels joy at the thought of violent and destructive images, such as taking off the head of the snowman and being thrilled at the thought of crying children. This shows a sadistic characteristic of the speaker and once again may be a result of his or her ostracism and how it has caused him or her to want others to feel pain just as he or she did. Additionally, aforementioned, Duffy includes a handful of colloquialism, specifically monosyllabic words. The terse words add a harshness to the speaker's voice and also shows his or her crude knowledge, implying his or her lack of education.
Next, I'll be talking about the attitude of the speaker. The attitude of the speaker seems to be an overall negative one that looks to inflict pain upon others. A snowman has no physical value at all, yet the speaker is described to have stolen it, mostly because he knew that it would inflict pain on the children who would wake up the next morning. However, one cannot help but feel sympathy for the speaker. Although the speaker takes joy in inflicting pain on others, this is only because of jealousy. The speaker has known isolation and pain his whole life, which can be reflected when the speaker says that he joyrides cars to nowhere, suggesting that the speaker has nowhere to go, nothing to do, and nothing to live for. His isolation can also be reflected when he moves the torso of the snowman, as he describes to have experienced a fierce chill piercing his gut as he hugged it to his chest. From this, it can be inferred that the speaker longs and has longed affection for so long that he would go to extreme measures in order to feel the slightest bit of affection. Isolation from society also seems to have had a strong influence on the way the speaker acts. In the second stanza, the whole process of stealing the snowman is described to have been a burdensome one, as can be seen when he says that the snowman weighed a ton. Yet, he carried on, saying better off dead than giving in, which shows that he has adopted a self-destructive attitude, as he is fine with himself dying in order to get what he wants. This quality seems to have been adopted due to his prolonged period of isolation that has led him to believe that he is worthless because he is unwanted by society. Coming off as a determined and self-destructive person until now, there is a huge shift of impression when the speaker attempts to rebuild the stolen snowman that in this fourth stanza. When his own snowman turned out to look insignificant compared to what it had been before, the speaker seems almost as if to accept the fact that he isn't good enough as everyone else. So, he proceeds to brutally destroy the snowman, kicking it over and over again. Once he is done, he is described to be standing alone amongst lumps of snow, almost engulfed by the feeling of loneliness after destroying what can be seen as his only mate, and low self-esteem after convincing himself that he is less than others. Lastly, I will be talking about the significance of snowman imagery. The snowman that this speaker steals is described to be a tall, white mute, and that he could have had a few reasons for stealing it. For example, the snowman could have been the ideal companion for him, as the speaker does say that he wanted a mate with a mind as cold as a slice of ice within his. By portraying the speaker's mind with the physical coldness of the snowman's, the author is showing that the cold-heartedness of the speaker that is reflected throughout the poem. The fact that the speaker mentions that the snowman was mute along with a lot of the other appealing qualities of snowman, such as tall and magnificent, can imply that the muteness of the snowman was important. From this, it can be implied that the speaker had experienced some verbal abuse in past relationships, causing him to isolate himself from society and to act the way that he does throughout the poem. This will also explain why he says that the part of the thrill was knowing that children would cry in the morning when stealing the snowman, because he knew he himself has had a hard life and feels as if it is his duty to teach other kids how life is tough.